All right, so we've had some technical difficulties. However, in accordance with the open meeting law, the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be found and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. The first issue is the agenda has two Zoom links, one which goes to a dead location and the other one which goes here. We have made efforts by delaying the meeting and by sending out emails and text messages to get all of the relevant parties to the correct one, the correct meeting. However, Renee pointed out that in a prior meeting of the planning board, when there were two links, that there were problems in compliance with the open meeting law, and Ezekiel has brought up the issue that it may be illegal to proceed. So with that, what do we want to do? I mean, I'm all for complying with the law. That said, we have everybody here, or at least everybody that I knew was coming except for Carter.
And I think Carter could probably answer this question.
Wow.
No, I think he would know. That's the,
All right.
yeah, because I honestly don't know.
Evan, what would you like to do?
Sorry, I'm reading through a KP Law presentation in Billerica on this. It's really fascinating. I mean, are both links on the agenda?
Yes.
Were both links on the planning board agenda?
I don't know if they were in the same one or they were two different agendas, to be honest.
Are both links in both agendas that we have?
We only have the one revised that has both links.
Did the
And
original
one of them isn't live.
Well,
did the right, so did the old link, did the old agenda have this link?
Yes.
That just makes it worse.
she meant no.
The original agenda that was posted had this link. This agenda has this link. The extra link is just part of the verbiage that was added. And it's not a live link.
It takes you to a waiting room and you sit there waiting for the host to join. It gives you a message saying, we've notified the host.
I hate to do this, but I'm gonna suggest we reschedule. I don't want to.
I don't want to either, but I'm nervous enough about it.
Yeah, I'd rather reschedule than violate the law. That's just my not vote, but opinion.
I mean, technically, we're already in violation because we're having this conversation.
All right, then.
If we're considering this a violation, we're already in violation.
So I don't know if I would consider it a violation because the law just requires adequate alternative means. And it doesn't mean that you have to have an exclusive definition. But I think that what might be safe is to say that we're not in violation if we are debating whether we're in violation. But if we think that there's a possibility that we are, we should suspend until a later date.
So the notice apparently must include clear instructions for accessing meeting remotely, Zoom link or call-in number. That's what I can find.
The problem is it doesn't say if it has clear instructions, but it also has another link because I'm looking at the, I don't know, but I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the instructions are not clear because it says you can go here and then there's another link to go here. So
I actually went to the first one first and sat there for a few minutes.
I saw the color blue and clicked on it. So
I saw the first link. Oh, maybe Mr. Passios got here.
Oh, we can ask Mr. Passios. We can blame him. if we get in
Mr.
trouble.
Passios, unofficial consigliere of the Budget Task Force. We have a Zoom link problem. There were two different Zoom links in the agenda. Some people went to one and some people went to the other. Do you think it violates the open meeting law to have the two different links? In other words, is it no longer clear, adequate alternative means for participation? In your prior experience, what do you think?
I thought the amendment corrected that. Apparently not.
No. The amendment, the original was fine. The amended one is the one that introduced the second spurious Zoom link.
Okay. Honestly, I don't think you've got a problem because if one link doesn't work, then they go back and they go to the second link and they're into the meeting. I mean, I scrolled down to under the amended paragraphs
Yeah.
and clicked on that link and I went right in. I think you're okay. Just record everything tonight. That's all. And
And we-
if you have any questions whatsoever, don't take any votes that have any substantive effect on anything, which I don't think you would anyway.
Yeah, we don't take any votes
We
anyway.
don't vote.
Right.
Yeah.
To interrupt, I texted Representative Kushmerik because he's did Fitchburg chair of their city council. So I'm quoting him. Now it's being recorded. The Secretary of the State's office is the ultimate arbiter. His instinct says that the meeting can continue, but decisions might need to be postponed.
That's fine. We have no decisions.
Right, but he said he deferred to the clerk's office. Now he'll know that I read out his answer. But I figured he was a pretty decent authority on it, right?
I would hope so.
So we can send any open meeting violations to Dave Passios and Mike Kushmerik. Done.
Yes. Yes. Thanks.
Ezekiel, what do you want to do?
And just a comment on that, by the time any decision comes back from the state, I will not be a citizen, resident of Massachusetts, so I'm not worried. Blame me.
You won't get extradited, I don't think.
My instincts are telling me we should reschedule. But if everybody's in agreement, then, that we should continue, then let's continue. But my instincts are still telling me we should reschedule.
Honestly, from what you read from Representative Kushmerik and the fact that you are not taking any votes and probably will never take any votes except maybe at the end when you present a report, I honestly don't see a problem, but it's up to you guys. You're the committee. I would, I don't know, your choice.
I would say since we have everyone here and we're not taking votes, and there is a clear way to fix the problem. Like if you sit in that link and you don't get anything well past the time in which the meeting is supposed to start, maybe you go back and look at the agenda and realize there's two links. Like the issue is clear is not defined. Like if you look at 940 CMR 29.10, it talks about remote participation. And there is a clear way in which to access the meeting. It does not address what happens if, like there's a typographical error or something. I don't think that the purpose of the open meeting law is to require letter perfect implementation of agendas. I think it's to allow the public to access. And so I would say that we should keep going. But I am more than willing to be overridden. I just don't want to inconvenience all of the people who came. I will also point out that this is one of the very rare meetings that we have where we're actually soliciting information from people not on the budget task force. And so reconvening some of these people, it might be impossible.
Mhm. I feel better after hearing Rep. Kuchmarek.
All right. Let's do this.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just make sure it's recorded, that's all.
Yes, it is
available.
being recorded. Chief Gamble caught that.
Yeah.
So we're good to go. All right.
It's available.
So, let's get to the first issue. Are there any public comments? Anybody have any public comments? I don't see any hands raised, so last call public comments. All right, no public comments, so let's move on. The purpose of this meeting was to get information from different stakeholders in town, unions, different groups, heads of departments for all the town departments, and then figure out, you know, have an idea of like where we're headed in terms of costs. So let me see who's here. Mary, would you be willing to start? Okay, so let's start with Mary, and then I see Brad, and then we can go from there. Does that work? All right, Mary, why don't you sort of give the group an idea of where you think we're headed financially in terms of what the teachers union is going to require?
Oh, can I eventually get to that?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, all right. So Tim Shays Green, who's now calling me, but I'm going to ignore it, is supposed to be on here too, but I gave him the wrong time. So Tim Shays Green, who's a teacher at the middle school, and I actually think have a positive in speaking to this committee, in that as far as town employees go, I think we have some longevity compared to other employees. I'm entering my 23rd year as a town employee, and I know he's been there a bit longer than I have. So we've been through a few decades of this town, and you've probably actually seen us. I know if you go back a decade or more, you've seen I will have made public comments in regards to where the town is going financially. When I started here right out of college, Lunenburg was a sought after district. It was a district that paid well, especially for opening salary. It actually has always been a bit more stagnant at the top, but paid well for opening salary. And honestly, Lunenburg wasn't even on my list to look at for schools, but at a job fair when we used to do those, people were actually talking about Lunenburg, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll ask. I entered in a rough market. People had openings but weren't always hiring. And when I stumbled literally into Lunenburg's booth, I said, oh, you have an English teacher, are you actually hiring? And they said, yes. Went through the interview process. It was a competitive process, and I felt very grateful to have a job. I've served as a department head as well, where we would have upwards of 100 applications, 100 qualified applications for jobs. Now we've seen those applications decrease. We've seen that we are offering a job to 3 or 4 candidates before someone actually accepts. Most of the time they're accepting elsewhere beforehand for more money. I don't know, do I have screen share? I probably don't. I don't think I have screen share ability, so I will just read from you. I went through and found, hold on, let me move this. I went through and looked at the past 15 years. So from the 2009-2010 school year, so that would be FY10 school year, and went back and looked at just the raises and any monetary like longevity payments or something like that connected to a raise. And so in that first year, I'll just kind of read them through quickly, but you'll get the picture, I think. In the 9-10 school year, we received a 1% salary increase, but on January 1st, which means, and you don't retro the rest of the year. So that means starting January 1st is when we received a 1% increase. The next school year, we used a 1.5%. The next 3 years, we took 3 zeros, so that is no pay increase unless you moved up in a step or a column change as far as getting a higher degree. We are required to have a master's degree within 5 years of teaching. We did add $2,000 to step 12 to try to catch that top step up. Then the next 3 school years, that's the 14-15 school year through the 16-17 school year, we received a 2% each year. But if you judge inflation roughly around 4, we're already behind. The next 3 school years, we did receive a 2, a 1, and a 2. And we did receive longevity payments at 15, 20, and 25 years. Again, the goal was that, and they don't accrue COLA. The goal with that was to get the top steps where you spend most of your career at those top steps, getting them some more money. We then took a 0% on the 2021 school year, but those on step 12 at that time, that top step, got a 0.5% halfway through the school year. And then our last contract was a 2.5, a 1.5, and a 1. And some money was added. We added a step or a partial step and added money to that. So anywhere, if you were an employee in the district from 2009 on, you have received for an increased total, and this is kind of bad math because it doesn't really show it. But if I just add up the COLAs, that is between 15 or 17% total since 2009, 2010. And inflation has increased more than that for sure. The other thing too, we have people leaving the district, and education has shifted, but we definitely have people leaving at a higher rate than other districts. We surveyed former employees as to why they left, and the biggest response is they either left education or they went somewhere else for a higher paying job. The one benefit, and I know I've said this at meetings before, but the one benefit that people did say that they were getting for negotiations, for a negotiated benefit was health insurance. But actually, health insurance is not something that we as teachers end up negotiating. It's done through our PEC committee. So technically, it's not something that we end up negotiating with people as our benefit. We also have people, positions that have been put together. So for example, when we moved into the new high school, what was a 6th grade librarian, a 6th through 8th grade librarian, and a 9th through 12th grade librarian became one librarian position. A lot of our specials in our buildings are shared between 2 buildings as well. Tim Shays Green is not seeing the email, so I'm going to read what Tim was supposed to read. So last year we asked people how inflation and the lack of their pay increasing has impacted them, and here are just some words from our teaching employees. College decisions for family are more limited. Basic living essentials, mortgage, and taxes have gone up. I use my credit card more. Oil tank fill is 25% full instead of a full oil tank filling. Copays and prescriptions have risen. Cost of living increases have exceeded the rate that our money has increased. School materials, gas, monthly budget have been impacted. Grocery and car impacts, interest rates, gas. Cost of living in the general household have tightened. It will be difficult to pay for college. Fewer vacations. Plans to move to a new house pushed off. Extra jobs for both a person and a teacher and their spouse. Making decisions about what to pay first to stretch out the money. Time away from family due to a second job. Daycare costs. I can't afford daycare. Skipped family vacations. I can't afford to buy a home. And car payments. I have to choose one. Healthcare costs have gone up. Groceries were $150. Now they're $300. Another one with groceries. It's difficult to keep feeding my family. I don't see this in there, but someone actually said they actually now use their town's food bank in order to make ends meet. Struggling to save money. Cannot pay bills. Don't know if I can afford to keep my position much longer. Big purchases need to be indefinitely delayed. I'm thinking of finding a second job to supplement my income. Someone else took on another second job to supplement an income. Used to go out to eat more often, once a week. Now they go out once a month. Someone said I live off of credit cards at this point. We had someone at negotiations last week, and Mr. Scullambrini, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder on this one, but who said without any kind of raise coming, that she was going to have to sell her house, that she was able to buy her house, but is making all her required payments now through savings. She doesn't make enough money to actually afford her house. And she was only able to purchase her house. She said she lived with her parents to save up a down payment. But now our pay has lagged so much compared to prices that she,
Mary, can I interrupt you real quick? I just
Yeah.
want to point out something. She was born in Lunenburg. She lived in Lunenburg. She left, got a degree, and then came back to Lunenburg. So this is somebody who has been here her entire life. And without the savings that cushion she had generated, her pay would not be enough to make her house payments.
thanks. So we are lagging. I mean, even in looking at what we are tentatively negotiating for 3 years of raises, it's similar to what other districts are already doing, or a little less. Meaning, if we were already behind those districts, and we were behind them, in fact, we have a chart that has in red everyone that we're behind, and in green. And I'm quoting Mr. Scullambrini here again. When he came in and saw the chart, he said, "What is that murder bath you have on the screen?" Or bloodbath, maybe, I don't know. So unfortunately, the difficulties that we are having are only going to get worse until we right this ship. Something that I have said, I mean, I'm speaking mainly for the teachers because I represent the teachers, but I would make the argument, and I know I've done this at town meeting, and I know I've done it at public comment and select board meetings and at FinCom. Everyone is underpaid in this town. This is not just a teacher issue. Everyone is underpaid in this town. And I think the turnover the town has started to see in the past year or so, we've been feeling on the school end before. We were kind of, ahead of it. But it's not surprising to me that it has hit the town. From a school end, and I think I see this differently because I'm a high school teacher. I would be remiss to mention that part of what we're paying for is the fact that we didn't regionalize. I'm a small town kid. I'm from a small town, smaller than Lunenburg. So I do definitely understand, the small towns, but without regionalization, we then as a town had to make the decision, are we going to fully support our schools? Are we going to fully fund the schools that our students deserve? And I know that as a teacher, I've seen electives go away. I think we see it as in the high school a bit more because the regionalization probably wouldn't have hit the other grade levels as much. I've seen classes that we used to offer go away. I know there's been a lot of comment, some on school committee end, some in more townwide meetings that, well, why do we have some small class sizes at the high school? We are a small high school. I would guess we're probably one of the smaller public high schools. And because we didn't regionalize, if we want to offer the courses that our students need, and some of those are specialized when you get to the high school level, that our students need to be successful in whatever their next endeavor is, that does come with, there will be some small class sizes. I think I said this at a FinCom meeting earlier. I'm also a parent in the district. And knowing how much my high school career was lacking because I was in a smaller school and they didn't fund it appropriately, I am now sitting here with a sophomore in high school and having a really, oh crap, epiphany moment as a parent that I may be doing to my own child what I know as a teacher now was thoroughly lacking in my high school education. I have a 6th grader, and we will seriously consider making a different decision for her high school career, based on what she wants and where she wants to go. Because if we don't fund the classes that our students need or want in high school, we are just going to be running a core program. Tim, hi, sorry. I talked a little bit for you, but I didn't read your spiel. I just quoted the impact on teachers, but I don't know if you want to say a little bit about your spiel there.
That'd be great. So if you have 1 or 2 other things to say, and then I'll get going with that.
Okay, I do not have 1 or 2 other things to say, but I don't know if anyone has questions for me as Tim's gathering his stuff.
Mary, can I ask you a real quick question?
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me about what the woman said before at the meeting was just how different it is for young people coming into the housing market. what's the age demographic look like for the teachers? Where are they in terms of like their financial life and their actual, lived years?
So I would say Dr. Gilson and Dr. Burnham can probably answer more the demographic question because I only see my building more and people are more names for me on a piece of paper than who I actually meet. I will say, putting myself in some of my colleagues' shoes. So I bought my first house at 24, and then the house that I'm currently in Lunenburg at 30. If I was a 30-year-old staff member, I could not afford the house that I'm living in right now. On my salary, even with my husband's salary, I could not have bought it. This house at 30 years old that I'm in, I would not have been able to afford.
All right, so there are other questions for you. Renee has a question and Evan has a question. I think Renee got her hand up first.
Okay. I'm just curious, you went back to 2009 and went through all of the raises. How did the number of teachers change over the course of that time period? Has staff stayed a steady level? I mean, I know you say people have left, but I assume you've been able to mostly backfill. Has it grown? Has staff grown? Teachers.
Maybe so I'm thinking back, and one of the reasons I pulled the 9-10 contracts is because those are the ones that I was part of the negotiating team, and so was rather actively in the union. And trying to think when I became president, the first time was probably somewhere around there, maybe a year or two later. I think the first year I became president, we were at 138 members. And we were 100% membership. And now I think our number is like 144 or something. We don't have all our people signed up yet. So we're looking about a 10-person difference in growth. But definitely from 2009, the laws have changed. What people are expecting schools to do has changed. So I would say it's not like an exponential growth that we've seen. I don't know if that answers it well enough.
You've seen other staff. I assume the number, like paraprofessionals and a lot of other. Yeah,
and that's, that one is harder for me to answer because they're not represented in my unit. They're a different contract. So I'm not as familiar with that. I do know though we're always looking for paraprofessionals. They're really hard to hire. And I would not want to do that job for that amount of money or that little amount of money.
So I think, is it fair to say that the staffing of schools today, all the types of employees in schools today, is different than 2009 significantly?
I feel like
Mary, I can help with that question.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Well, first of all, I just sorry I couldn't get on till a little bit later than Mary. Some things going on, so forth. But it's nice to see everyone. And I'm Tim Shaskin. I'm the contract manager and a 7th grade teacher. And I don't think there's been a dramatic change. It's kind of gone up and down over the years because, essentially, the population of Lunenburg has grown, but not at a huge rate. I mean, and when I first started teaching in Lunenburg 25 years ago, I had classes with 17 kids in them. I do know that, and then now I have over 20. So if anything, there's been the amount of educators I don't think have kept up with the growing population of students that it has grown. Would be now this is somewhat anecdotal though, but I would say there hasn't been a dramatic increase in staffing.
Beyond teachers.
I'm
not talking just teachers. I'm talking everyone in the building. Paraprofessionals, the guidance counselor, was that it? Guidance counselors, social workers, I forget. There's a lot of staff that wasn't around when I was in high school.
I know that there's been additions to certainly help with social emotional learning and mental health and things like that, as there's been more awareness as time has gone on regarding those things. That's obviously been good changes for the school and for the culture and for students. But I haven't seen like a dramatic increase in staff. But again, you could look back and we could see what the numbers are. But I would say it's not a dramatic change over 15 years.
Okay.
And in our positions, we're not as privy to the numbers of other bargaining units and unions. So like the paras aren't
Yeah.
part of our group.
I just want to
Um,
get like an N. What's the total
Yeah,
count?
I don't, I'm not,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be information we have.
Okay.
And I do have that statement now if folks are ready. It's is now an appropriate time, or should I hold off? I don't want to kind of jump in and interrupt if there's something else that needs to be done first.
I think Evan had a question.
Now, thank you. Renee kind of stole my last question there. I agree. I think if we could get a total number of, this is probably more from the district side, of sort of just total employees by, I guess, classification, category, whatever you want to call it, whether it's like administrative versus, you know, the custodial staff, the kitchen staff, and then all of that, to see if part of the reason kind of why the slower increases in the COLAs haven't tracked is because you're trying to take the same pool of money and
Yeah.
spread it out across a much larger bath of people. I think that would help to understand that.
Yeah, I can say too, and this is going to skew numbers. We went through education. I think those of us in education know that when there are tough fiscal times, education is the first thing cut, and usually it's the last thing to come back. And so some of the money woes are actually the fact that when we face significant cuts, we never got paid back for those cuts. So some of it, like I think it was the year that we had those 3-0, the 3 years we had those 3 zeros, was a significant budget cut in some positions, like a director of teaching and learning. So I think it was another name then. That was a position cut. So it's tough when you look at some of those numbers as a whole too. Like there was a year that the superintendent did the superintendent's job and the special service director job, which is just an insane undertaking to do either of those, but to do them both. So like I know in my department, we had years where we just, although we lost it in this last budget, and we just lost half a person, but we just got back maybe 3 years ago, got back to the staffing number that we were at when some of those significant budget cuts came through the last time. I think including last year, this might be like my 3rd round of significant budget cuts that I've been through as an employee. So some of that is hard to tell because your numbers do go up, but it's more that, oh, we're finally staffing at closer to where we should be, where we've worked understaffed for quite a while.
So is this kind of more of a argument in the sense of minimum wage kind of finally catching up to what it needed to be 25 years ago? Sort of a scenario that you're kind of catching back up to where you were supposed to be, but a decade prior. And now we're still kind of facing the shortages afterwards.
Yeah, education hasn't, I've got many reasons why, but I won't go into that. But education has never kept up with salaries in other fields. It just has never kept up. And then when you put inflation in it, it's a whole, I actually in class the other day, a kid was thankful for something I worded in his essay, and I made a joke of like, that's what they pay me the big bucks for. And I was like, actually, like in 1970 something, I would have only been making 13,000. So whatever, I'm doing better. And then a few minutes later, it's like, well, with inflation, you'd actually be making $103,000 now. And I was like, never mind, I'm not doing any better. So it's never kept up with. And I think one of the things that employees, and I know some townspeople spoke of this in some of the budget process last year, one of the things that your town employees, and I definitely know it on the teacher end, and I'm assuming other town employees did too, the reason that our budgets were somewhat solvent is that your employees took it on their backs. Like they didn't take raises. They didn't get these extra, they did more work. Like someone was cut, okay, I guess we'll do that job too. But then there was never any, you'd go years without a hire back to get that job done. And there would be promises of, guys, if you take this cut now, we did furlough days where we didn't get paid for a certain time. There's never then a bounce back from that. In fact, you would 5 years later go through another budget crisis. I'm like, can you give up a little bit more?
Thank you. I think that's all I have. Other than, I can definitely attest to teachers and staff going to the food pantry. We're there on Sunday mornings, and I've seen at least 3 different ones that my kids know coming through. You know one.
And right. And the state wants for paraprofessionals. They do expect paraprofessionals to have a degree. I think most of ours do on the paras, and most of your teachers by law are going to have a master's degree. So and we have to keep taking courses to keep our certification up as well. We recertify every 5 years. So I would say you have a highly qualified and educated field of people who are going to the food bank.
And honestly, I mean, my 16-year-old daughter who babysits makes more money than some of the paraprofessionals per hour, you know, and that doesn't seem right. So should I go ahead and read the statement? Is that okay? Okay, so I'll try and be quick here. And thank you for inviting Mary and I, or Mary and me rather. In the spring of 2024, members of the LEA were asked 3 questions relating to the increased cost of living, inflation, and how it impacts each of their lives. It is important to note that the LEA members received a total of 7 to 7.5% COLA raise in their pay scale between 2019 and 2024. In roughly the same time frame, Social Security provided a 20.4% COLA. Federal government clearly understood and reacted to inflation. Lunenburg did not. Not placing blame on anyone. It's just fact that, you know, federal government had the ability to react. Lunenburg either, you know, could not. We all know the impact that inflation has on our lives. Basic necessities like food, childcare, auto repairs, and medical expenses have increased at a rate that is forcing people to purge their savings. It is not right. People's dreams and aspirations are on indefinite hold, and the educators in Lunenburg are sad. Some of them are angry, frustrated. And here are just some of the responses from some of our folks. The first question was, how has economic inflation impacted you and your family in the past 5 years? And I'll just go through some of the responses. Less vacation with family, can't purchase quality food, decreased my savings, housing expenses have risen, my pay is not kept up with increased expenses, our savings have been emptied, we rarely go out to eat anymore, all my money goes to the bills, the prospect of home ownership is not present, groceries are very expensive, gas, food, and insurance costs have gone up, I am scraping by, we go on less vacations, I have needed to get a second job to make ends meet. I need to work more during the summer and the school year. Daycare costs have gone up. With 2 kids in college, it has been quite tight. As a single person, inflation has impacted me dramatically. I no longer feel that I can claim to be middle class. I can't afford a home. Car payments are difficult. Groceries are a financial hardship. Choosing to be a teacher shouldn't be choosing financial hardship. I pay almost double for groceries for my family of 4. Daycare costs have increased, and I will have 2 kids in daycare next year. Our utility costs have steadily gone up, and health insurance has increased as well. Each year, it feels like we make less money. I'm barely scraping by. The cost of everything has gone up, but not our pay. I am a single adult working 40 to 50 hours a week and can hardly afford rent and bills. 40 to 50% of my income goes to rent. I can no longer cover my bills. I have taken on multiple stipend positions in order to make up for pay cuts, inflation versus COLA. Also, I have taken a second job for a while, and I am considering getting a second job again. Those were quite a few of the comments. And then the second question was, do you feel that your pay increase in Lunenburg has kept pace with inflation? Every single person said absolutely not. To that question, some in different, you know, they answered slightly differently, like absolutely not, no, not at all. Nope, mathematically, it is clear that we haven't. And then we asked people to please provide specific examples of ways that economic inflation has impacted your family.
Tim, I read that one, Tim, just an
Okay.
FYI.
So, yeah, so Mary, I think when I came on, you were going through that one. So, you know, a lot of the answers are repetitive, just kind of reinforce the issue. But I do go back to, again, when the COLA has increased over 5 years in Lunenburg by 7 and 7.5%. The federal government has increased Social Security by 20.4% at the same time. And things didn't look much brighter even prior to that past 5 years. You have a problem that has compounded over a decade. And so that's where we're at. And folks love the town of Lunenburg. I think Lunenburg's a great town. I think it's a great place to be, but people also have to be able to provide that for their families. And that's becoming increasingly difficult to do if people aren't getting raises to keep up with basic needs like food, healthcare costs, childcare, you know, so on and so forth. Thank you.
Evan has a question.
Yep, Evan.
Twice now, sorry. Just two real quick ones. One, is there any sort of delineation in those responses for staff that lives in the town versus outside of the town?
No, we didn't ask that question specifically. So, I mean, so no, we could certainly maybe gather that information, but I think it's, you know, most people live in Lunenburg or live in one of the surrounding towns where cost of living is pretty, you know, comparable, I think. You know, I don't think, you know, we don't have people commuting from places where it's substantially more expensive to live. I don't think, like from, you know, Concord or Carlisle or I mean, we might have one or two staff, you know, but we also have equal number of staff that maybe live in places that are a little bit more affordable too. So no, we did not gather that information. So
I figured it's a tough question to ask anyways.
Yeah.
In general, at least on the teacher's side, I know you and Ms. Foyle are associated with that side. Do we have a rough idea as to how many of the staff of the teachers live within Lunenburg? Just again, out of curiosity.
I do somewhere, because I emailed them all about the override and I had to separate Lunenburg teachers from non-Lunenburg teachers. Hold on, if you give me a few minutes, I can pop back up with the answer on that. I know where to look.
Thank you.
Renee had her hand up. So while Mary's looking, let's see if we can get Renee's question answered.
I had the same question Evan just asked.
One thing that I wanted to point out, and this is from the perspective of somebody on school committee, and Dr. Burnham and Dr. Gilson, please correct me if I'm wrong or whatever. One of the things that I noticed when I first got on school committee 3 years ago was that staffing tended to be pretty stable. I got on right as COVID was starting to lift. The thing that I noticed last year was the fact that staff were leaving at a really pronounced rate. And so one thing that I learned when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do school committee, I asked a bunch of different people. I think I might have asked Mr. Passios at a town meeting. But there was this idea that like teachers and paraprofessionals and other educators, they come here and they stay here because this is a good place to live or this is a good place to work. And I think that to a large extent, one of the reasons why we have gotten really strong test scores and improvements in empirical metrics for the school is because that's true. But I think that that proposition can only hold people here for so long. And I think the attrition over the last 18 months has shown that we have reached the point where like this is a quaint little New England town where everybody knows each other as the selling point is no longer sufficient. And so like, even if we're not talking about like equitable pay, which obviously I think is important, but if we're talking about just in terms of running the district, I think that Dr. Burnham would say that we are encountering difficulties of a magnitude that we have not encountered before, and that they are largely due to gaps in pay. And so, you know, not from the perspective of we should do the right thing or we should reward the people that educate our children. None of that. Just like a business thing. We are not getting enough people to sign up to come here, to work here, to do what we need. And so I think that, like, from the perspective of management, that's a dire concern. That is, you know, you can't have a McDonald's if you don't have people that work the front end. You can't have a car repair garage if you don't have mechanics. And we can't have a school if we don't have educators. And for a long time, we have been lucky that people stayed here because they liked it here. But if you can't afford to live here because where you're working doesn't pay you enough, you're not going to stay here. And I think that one of the reasons that member's comment really hit me hard was because she was from here. She knew what the score is going in. She knew, for example, that there hadn't been an override since 1994 until this year the parents said, we think we need to change this. But I think that what I'm trying to impress upon the other members of the budget task force, and I know that most of the people here already know this, but we were facing critical shortages in positions, and we had a very, very difficult time filling them. I mean, I don't think it's a surprise, but you know, one of the administrators at Turkey Hill has yet to start, and that is emblematic of the problem that we are facing. We cannot count on the Lunenburg Country Club effect to keep people here anymore.
I can actually add to that point too. One of the things that we did as a negotiating team entering negotiations is we actually created platforms this year, and hopefully all our proposals would help us say, is this a good proposal or not, would fit under the platform. And the first two platforms, the first one was attractability. How do we attract people into Lunenburg? And so it wasn't just looking at money, it was anything within the contract. And then our second platform was retention. Okay, how do we keep people here? Because you don't want to pull people in and keep them their first 3 years and then do that training and put money into the mentor program, which Tim Shays Green runs, and do all that to have them go elsewhere. You don't always want to be starting with new people, just like a sports team. You want some of your veteran people in there who've been through the system as well. We want people to be staying. I did just look up, this is from last year's data, so some people are retired, and I don't know if any of our new hires live in town, but last year we had about 40, and again, our membership last year I think was at 148 or so, and 43, from what I can tell, at least 43 of those people from just the teachers lived in town.
So most don't live in Lunenburg.
I guess we're looking at about between a quarter and a third live in Lunenburg, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, because I'm not from this area, I'm from Massachusetts, not this area. My first house was in Fitchburg. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, I'll look in Lunenburg. Like I work in that school system. I should believe in that school system. And I really believe in the job that our teachers are doing. I just don't know if we have all the resources to really pull off the job. I don't know if I'd make the same decision if I was a new teacher today, looking at places to move my family. And like, I don't like saying that. Like I have been in this district for 23 years. I have put my blood, sweat, and tears. Like, this district is my life's work. And I want to leave it as my life's work and life's work done well. So to say, I don't know if I would make the same decision that I made 15 years ago. I don't like that. That's something I feel I have to say.
I know this is another tough one to make you dig even further. Do we have like trend data to kind of go along with that from previous years? Do you have any idea? Have we lost people that did we used to have more teachers that lived in Lunenburg going back to the kind of FY 2010, or has that decreased, increased? Or is that an impossible number to find?
Yeah, and some of that is honestly where I got my data from. Teachers who live in Lunenburg was the MTA. Like, that was the easiest place for me to get a sheet and sort out in Excel. I was very proud of myself to be able to sort it out, but to sort that out. So I don't know. I mean, that was something in we use email a lot more in 2024 than we did in 2008 when I first became president. So some of that is probably not information that we have so well. My gut tells me it's probably trending that people don't live in town. I would think, and just thinking it, and Tim, I don't know about you, but thinking about the retired teachers, I know from my career, a fair amount of the retired teachers did and still do live in town. So, but that's just what my gut says, but that could be totally wrong.
And I also don't know what like the typical ratio would be for people who live in town and also work in town. You know, it kind of comes down to personal choice, but yeah, I don't know, but there seems to generationally, there seems to be quite a few families that stay in town, but that's sort of just observation, you know, it's not quantitative information that I'm giving you.
I will say, teaching wise too, a lot of people make the conscious effort not to live in the town where they teach. It's like they don't want to go to the grocery store and have someone be like, "Oh, how's blah blah doing in class?" Like it is they don't want to go out running on their roads and have their students see them out in their running gear. Many people make the conscious effort to not live in the town they're teaching in.
We have anything else from the union or questions for the teachers union?
I actually have one question. Has the issues regarding salary, has that affected the quality of candidates as you backfill positions? Obviously you have great staff now, but let's say, for example, maybe 5 years ago, you have to choose between 4 and 5, and now you have 2 or 3. Is that kind of trend happening at all? And yeah.
I know the district can speak to this as well. I can speak to it as someone who's been on a number of hiring committees, and feedback that actually some peers asked me, "Hey, make sure you say this." We are probably, something is education is shifting a little bit. You have fewer people for sure going into the field, but when you have fewer people going into the field, you then want to be the place where people want to work. And Lunenburg isn't at the top of that for people. It's not on people's radar like it used to. And we had a position last year that I think was the 4th person they offered it to. And that means you've gone through the interview process with all these people. It was the 4th candidate who actually accepted the job. I know there was another position this year that they had to, and Dr. Burnham can definitely fill in better for this. But they thought they had someone, and nope, you've got to start the interviews all over again. And that's people's time too. When we talk time being money, all these interviews take up a lot of people's time as well. So yeah, it's not, you know, and that's kind of the reason I opened with what I opened with is people used to want to come to Lunenburg. And I don't want to paint it like a terrible place. I work there. I enjoy working there. But it's now where people will take a job as opposed to this is my top pick. We are losing people for their top picks, and getting people who are accepting a job. And that's not trying to demean the people who think we're still hiring good people, but it's more like in a housing market. It's the buyer's market. If we're the seller, it is the buyer's market right now in Lunenburg, not us having our pick.
And Mary, if I could just add to that for a second too. I mean, you know, I recently shared some information with Susan regarding some comparable towns and that sort of thing. And these are all towns that are, you know, fairly close by, you know, within driving distance of Lunenburg. Not like an hour, you know, most of them not more than like a half an hour commute or something like that. And the one constant that you found across I forget exactly how many towns it is, I'd have to gather the list, but across the number of towns that we looked at, the big consistency was Lunenburg was last on the list as far as pay was concerned, or maybe second to last on this list of towns. So if people are applying, in a general area, and there's not a lot of teachers going into the field today, if you can't compete, then you're not going to get the best educators. I think you have some really quality educators in Lunenburg. I know you do. But a lot of them are the folks, that will stick around for a period of time, and they'll foster, they'll develop those skills, and they'll become better educators, and they'll create, relationships with colleagues and so on, and learn the culture of the school. And that's not happening nearly at the rate as it used to happen. So that's the concern, or one of the concerns.
Chrissy Carboni has a question.
Not so much a question, but just a thought. I mean, I've worked in the business world for 26 years. I've worked in the education world. Thank God my job combines both and makes me very happy. But one of the things, when business is not attracting the employee that they want, it isn't just a matter of let's throw some more money at it. They have to stop and think very critically about what is it that people really want. What do educators want sometimes? They want after school care so that they can stay and take care of what their job requires. They need morning extended day benefits so that they can come in early and make sure that they're running off the number of copies that they need for the day. There's opportunities to say, okay, if you work in the district, maybe you get school choice because that makes it easier for you to take care of your child here and there. There's inside benefits. And I don't know if anybody has looked at, and I'm sure Mary and Tim, these things have come up over the years. What are the inside benefits that don't cost the town a whole lot of money? Yes, it costs for the space that they're going to sit in the extended day program, or, or if they're going to be, taking a school choice slot. But, you have to get creative about these things. All the teachers can use the gyms. All the teachers can, I'm sure there's a whole lot more creativity, but I totally understand where everybody's coming from. And I see the teacher salaries. I do. The secretaries work year round, and we don't make a third, even half, what a lot of the teachers do, and we've got the same education. So when you're looking at creative ways to attract good teachers, it's not just teachers. I've had police officers' wives calling saying, hey, can my kid go to your school district because my husband is an officer in town. So it's not just for the teachers, it's for the whole town to become a place that people want to work in. And then maybe they'll want to live here too. But it's just a thought.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment or ask a question regarding the teachers union? Not seeing any hands raised except for Chrissy's is just still up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it down.
Okay. I know that Brad is on the line. Does anybody have any issues if we go to Brad next? Oh, wait, Dave Passios. Wait, sorry, Brad. Dave Passios has his hand up. Mr. Passios?
Just waiting for the video to come up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick comments and Ms. Forel and the other gentleman, a lot of the comments that came from your teacher checklist or whatever for pressures on their day-to-day lives from a cost point of view. You could take 100 people in town that have nothing to do with the school district, and they would answer the questions exactly the same as you. It's not a good situation for the entire population. And excuse me, increases in the private sector have not kept up also in many areas. So I think there needs, if you want to really take a hard look at teacher salaries, I think you need to put 2008 through 2024 side by side with two other comparable cities or towns to see what those contracts brought in for those teacher unions in those towns. I do know that I believe 2008, 2009 was a very, very, very difficult budget year. So it's interesting that you picked the one year that there were serious issues with funding everything in town. And I do believe that the next contract round, I don't remember what the percentages were, but it cost the town $1.2 million over 3 years. I do remember that. So this isn't unique to the teachers union. So I think a broader comparison needs to be made, but I appreciate the information. I don't question any of the numbers that you presented this evening, but I don't think it's unique just to the teachers. Thank you.
I think that makes an excellent segue to what we're looking for from Brad. Brad, would you care to introduce yourself and then give us some insights as to what you guys are dealing with?
Sure. I'm the Brad McNamara. I'm the president of the police union. I just want to, kind of start off by saying, we're lucky in the town we live in. The culture in the department's a great department, and we get along with the management of our department really well comparatively to a lot of the towns around here. That being said, I think if you were to look at the officers that we have at this department, they're some of the most professional and they'll progressive and they'll go over and above more than most. And to keep that, we need to make sure we're offering them, a competitive salary, competitive benefits, and competitive pay for education. And if you don't pay for education and if you don't pay salary, you're going to continue to lose people. When I started in 2014, people were knocking down the door to get into this profession in this department. So much so that when I started, I had to do 220 hours of training for free. And there was a line of people lined up to work for free for the town of Lunenburg. Towards the end of, before police reform came in, before that change in the reserves went away, we weren't having that. When I first started, we had a line of candidates out the door. You had to work here, and that was the only way you were going to get here. We've been lucky these last couple rounds, but instead of having 10 quality candidates, we might have one. We only have, the chief can echo this, right? Like, we'll take 3 steps forward with staffing, and then people will leave. They'll leave to surrounding departments. They'll leave to the state police. They'll leave for somewhere else. We'll have people on for 3 years. We'll have trained them. We'll have sent them to school. We'll have invested a lot of money in them, and they'll pick up and they'll leave and they'll go to a different department. For more money, for more benefits, whatever the case is, we have to find a way to attract quality candidates and retain them. And if you don't attract quality candidates and retain them, at the end of the day, it's going to end up being a liability for the town and a pain for me. That's the last thing I want. I pride myself on having a department that's very professional, and I want to keep it that way. But the only way we can do that is by attracting quality candidates, and you have to put a competitive salary together. You have to pay these guys more. You know, and people today have the choice of where do you want to work. I think within the last month, I saw a job opening in Townsend, Ashburnham, Sterling, and maybe even Shirley. All someone has to do is take their pick and they can go to the next department. It's not like it was 20 years ago where you got on, you were happy you got a job and you just stayed here forever. If the salary or the culture, if they're not right, they'll just pick up and leave. And I'll tell you, the majority of the people that left, from speaking to them, a lot of them went to other departments that paid more. I mean, we're going to get into contract negotiations. I don't have any of those numbers. I just wanted to speak broadly about we need to do what we have to do to attract quality candidates and be competitive. And if we don't pay, that's the one thing that these guys want, is they want to be able to pay. They want to be able to have a work-life balance. And they want to be able to, you know, be, if you want education, unfortunately, you have to pay for that. I didn't go in as detailed as Mary, sorry. Yeah.
I'm gonna call myself. One thing that I know from working in the criminal legal field in New Hampshire is that the number of candidates overall for police in general has declined pretty precipitously. Has that remained true in Lunenburg?
I mean, the chief could speak to that, but yeah, we're not getting the amount of applicants that we used to. And I'll tell you this, I've done the last, 2 or 3 contracts. In every contract we go into, the first contract I did, the town gave us a list of comparables that they wanted us to use, and that's what we've used every time. I break everything down by spreadsheet from hourly to all their comps in their contract to a total compensation package, and I give that to the town. Every single time we've met, all they've wanted to be is average, and we've been, hey, if average, that's fine. That's what you guys want. But if you just want to be average in today's job market, you're not going to get the quality candidates. You're going to struggle, and you're going to get people, you're going to bring them in, you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars to train them, and they're going to turn around and walk out the door in three years.
Does anyone have any questions for Brad? I see Evan has his hand raised.
I guess my question is only directed at Brad because he's the second in line to go here, and it's very reminiscent of what the teachers union just kind of stated. I suppose the question that I have is within the confines of Proposition 2.5 that we can't really go past without overrides. I guess it's a sort of an open-ended question of, I don't see a way, having looked at all of these, I mean, I've looked at countless spreadsheets with budgetary stuff, and I don't see a way that we can maintain COLAs at 2.5% increases on a yearly basis for the taxes. So unfortunately, what I see out of this is I don't see this just getting better. I see this as only saying, I'm sorry, the pie is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because we have, whether it be unfunded mandates or whether it be we have to, you know, pay into this other plan that we have to do as well, that slice for salaries just keeps going down and down and down. And it's sort of this net negative spiral that I'm not sure how we get ourselves out of. So I guess it's not really much of I guess it's more rhetorical than anything else, but I suppose is that having spoken to other departments, I assume, are you seeing that other departments are having similar sort of staffing issues as well? You mentioned 3 or 4 other ones that have openings. Are they also losing officers to other districts as well? Or
I didn't ask them particularly, hey, why are you guys leaving, right? Like, why do you have the openings? Normally I'm in the phase where now I call around for contracts, ask for contracts, stuff like that. But I guess the big thing is, you know, right now we have people that will go over and above if they need something, they'll be there, right? Like it does, drop what they're doing, they'll come in, whatever need be. And I want to keep that quality of people. Like I want to be able to attract and retain a high quality employee. And if you say to someone, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, you can work here and we have a ton of work, but you can work, but I'll give you $1, or you can go next door and do the same, maybe a little bit less work, and I'll give you $2 or $3. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right. And we're in a weird spot where the majority of our members only get every 6 weekends off. They only get every 6 weekends to spend with their family. Some of them work when we're sleeping. So like it's not the same as, it's hard enough to attract people to do this because this generation is all about work-life balance and, it's just a different time, right? And if we don't do something, and I get it, but we need to find a way to bring in people who are going to work hard, stay here, and they're a high quality candidate and a high quality officer. That's going to keep the town happy. It's going to keep the town safe, and that's going to keep the town the less liability on the town in the long run.
May I say something adding to what Brad just said and kind of Evan's rhetorical question? So I think in 2.5, when Prop 2.5 came, there's obviously a lot of politics as to why 2.5 came in. But the intention was not that the state wasn't saying your costs are only going to increase 2.5%. It was saying, and I think this is what some people don't understand or don't want to understand, honestly, is that, well, Prop 2.5, they just can go up 2.5. Your costs are going to go up more than that. In fact, towns probably have to do an override every 7 to 10 years just to balance their budgets. There were years, I don't know if it was in my first few years teaching in Lunenburg, it hasn't happened since I've lived here, where Lunenburg didn't even levy its full 2.5%. So when you don't do that, that does add up over time. I'm going to use an example we can all laugh at, but my father-in-law was a teacher in Wellesley, so we can all laugh at that. He lived an hour away from Wellesley because it's where he could get a job, but he couldn't afford to live there. And Wellesley was a district that did an override most years to make their budget work. And I'm not saying Lunenburg has to do an override most years, but I am saying we've kind of buried our heads in the sand if we think we can keep getting the same services only going up 2.5% when costs are going up more than that. It's just, it's not logical. And so I think that's the issue with many people's understanding of Prop 2.5. The state wasn't saying that's how much your cost should only go up. It was saying that the town has to approve, paying for services above that 2.5%.
I couldn't agree more. The tricky part is that we haven't done an override since last year in decades. And I think there's the culture of, there's a whole generation of people in Lunenburg that have never passed an override or that have not had an override go through. And I think it's versus your towns that do an override every year or 7 overrides every year, and that's how they fund their budget. I think it's, and I said this at the finance committee, that I'm done with what we've always done is what we're going to keep doing. That's pointless. And so I agree, but it's going to be really hard to convince taxpayers that, oh, hey, your taxes are going to just go up again. But at the same time, it's well, do you want teachers? Do you want public safety? Do you want a fire department? What do you want in town? I guess the kind of follow-up question I have for both is, are we starting to see, you both mentioned kind of the morale and just the general kind of workplace atmosphere. Has that started to kind of diminish at all with where we're at with salaries and employee retention?
For us, we're coming to the end of the contract, right? So we've always been, hey, listen, this is what we agreed to, and our guys are working towards it. And we have good bosses, right? So it makes things a lot easier. They're easy to work with. They understand where we're coming from. you know, and if there's a problem, we were able to work it amongst ourselves. So in that sense, yeah, they still do enjoy coming to work, right? They like it. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to go home to someone and you're gonna have to answer to your family. And if someone sees a job posting and it's for a significant amount more, your family's going to say, go somewhere else, right? And there's nothing stopping guys now from saying, hey, listen, I'll go to the next town. Because our retirement's all the same. You do the same number of years, you do the same number of everything. You just go back to late nights. And, you know, I'm the old guy in the department, just so you know. Like, we have a very young department. There's nothing to stop a lot of these kids from saying, yeah, I'll go 2 towns over, I'll go 3 towns over for more money.
We don't have a settled contract at this point. So, and I think we're close. But even when we do, our pay, and I do understand other benefits matter. Our pay probably still won't be as competitive as we would like it to be. And I know I've spoken at meetings about this too. I actually think, and Brad, I don't know if you would agree, but I would think you might agree, our health insurance has actually been our most competitive benefit. And people have, and I know people have said this to me, they've taken the job because the pay was less, but the health insurance was good, or stayed with the job because of the health insurance. And so, you know, I know everything's being looked at, and I know that contract is up. And I do have fears that if that shifts, we actually could lose out on more candidates or potentially lose more employees, because health insurance, you know, you look at the total package, and health insurance has provided a good package. And so people definitely are looking at the whole benefit, you know, and like, it's a smaller town, so smaller towns have some issues that bigger towns don't have, but bigger towns have issues smaller don't. You know, so I think people are weighing the options, but it's police actually probably have it worse with candidate pool, but the candidate pools are just lower than they've ever been. And so you have to be that much more competitive across the board in all sorts of benefits to attract people.
You know, Evan, I know you asked for ideas to keep people here, and I'm not trying to speak out of turn, but like, I know the fire unions here, and there's a lot of things I think you could do with them, and I'm sure Christos can talk to it, that's not monetary, that might be able to help them out. So, you know, I'm pretty much giving my spiel. I think he can go further with this, but you know, there are things, you know, and we're all here to work together, but we just got to attract quality candidates.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say one thing quickly. Chrissy, I think your idea about other benefits is a really good one. And I will tell you that, at least in the groups that we've been dealing with, that was a major point for the employees. And so they are definitely thinking of other creative ways, understanding that there are financial constraints. So, you know, like, it's not just throw money at a problem. I don't think, I can't speak for what any of the other groups did, but I know that the teachers were very conscientious about thinking of other ways. So it's on their radar. I know that it's happening. And I think ultimately, you know, like, if somebody paid me $1 and I could figure out a way to do it financially, I would take Joe Castiglione's job, because I really like that job. And I don't think we're ever going to be in a situation where, you know, we could have 148 people be announcers for the Red Sox, but, you know, there are things that we can do that aren't monetary. But I want to make sure everybody's aware they are doing that. These are ideas that are on the table. Some of them are really sort of creative and surprising. And, you know, it's not always about, well, this is going to cost us more money. Sometimes they don't necessarily even cost more money, but those thoughts are happening and those things are taking place. I would like to have somebody from the fire department. Christos, if you would like to, thank you. All right.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Christos Lagadidis, president of the Firefighters Union. So, yeah, I'm gonna kind of jump all over the place here. But I'm initially going to echo Brad's comments that we are in the same boat as them. We don't have the pool of candidates knocking down our door looking for a job. It's just a sign of the times, and I know a lot of departments throughout the region are facing the same thing. 10 years ago, I took an entrance exam for the town of Concord, and I was one of 150 people that were invited to take that exam, and there was only one guaranteed position off of that hiring process. They had a recent hiring process where they had to get down to basically the bottom of the barrel and go to candidates that didn't originally make it past the first interview. So when you're looking at ways to retain your employees, it's more than just money. I've made it very blunt with the previous town manager that average in this town is no longer cutting it, because you can look at our bulletin board, almost always it's full of postings for other departments. So it's basically, like I believe Mary said, it's a buyer's market, and we can basically go wherever we want, and we don't want to do that. Like, I'm fortunate to work with a group of people that love working in this town, love working with each other, of the people that they serve in this town, but they're not going to continue to have their quality of life decay because there's no work-life balance. So our biggest issue is our schedule. We work a 48-hour week where the standard in the area is a 42-hour week. That's what most fire departments work. We, with that schedule, we cover 6 days a week with full-time staff, and Sundays we rely on our call force to basically pick up the rest. Problem with that is we have 30 members on our call department. Not all of them are able to take shifts, but 18 of those 30 work for full-time departments elsewhere, and the rest of them have full-time jobs doing something else. So with the amount of our call volumes exploded in the last 18 years that I've been on, you're not getting these people coming out the door 3-4 times a night for calls, or taking shifts, on their one weekend off in their rotation on their other department just to appease us when they have families. I scoured the professional firefighters Massachusetts database earlier today and looked up every full-time department, every union full-time department in the state. 191 work a 42-hour week. We're one of 7 that work a 48-hour week, 2 work a 56-hour week, and there was about 30 other ones that I just couldn't readily find their contracts. They weren't posted. So, the writing's on the wall where we need to be, and we don't, like I said, we don't have the people applying for these jobs. We just finished up 2 years ago a 5-year staffing plan where we agreed to go to the paramedic level. The town has invested upwards of probably $300,000 between training and equipment to get us to that point. Now we're operating successfully at that, but the town needs to protect their investment in this. Part of the deal with that was we were going to get to a 42-hour week so we could cover 7 days a week with full-time staff. This archaic staffing model is not working anymore. I've spoken at a recent select board meeting about this, because when we can't fill those Sunday shifts, our members are getting forced to work these shifts, and it's just killing morale. It's killing the quality of life. They, my members are frustrated that they can't plan more than a weekend or 2 in advance because they're worried of when they're going to get their next force is going to come. And this is on top of the abundance of overtime they are already working to cover our own shifts. So it's no longer acceptable. We have people looking elsewhere, and unless something changes, we're going to probably have an open position. I'd say by the end of this fiscal year. I mean, personally, myself, I have been looking, and I worked for this department 18 years. That just gives you a sense of where we're at with this. So, and this should not be anything new, because if you look at probably at least the last 5 years of the fire chief's budget presentation, he has said the reason so we can't attract, already trained paramedics to apply for our open positions is money and schedule. No one's gonna give up, the extra 6 hours, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you try and, have a work-life balance, that they're just not gonna do it. And, we need to fix our schedule, and we need to up our staffing. I mean, the 5-year staffing plan was great, but personally, I believe it put us to a point that we should have been at 10 years prior. I've lived in this town most of my life, and I've seen the town grow, and none of the departments in this town have grown at the same rate of, that our town has. And now we're all paying the price for this, and that's why we're all in this situation. So, we have a fire chief that is constantly having to respond on an ambulance call as part of the 2-person ambulance crew, because we don't have enough staff to cover more than one call at a time. That's completely unacceptable. That's not what you pay a department head to do. You pay him to do the job that is under his job description. And if he's running ambulance calls and is stuck at the hospital for an hour plus for a turnaround time, that's other work that's not getting done. So we got to stop robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I guess I'll end it with that.
Any questions for Christos? All right, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to move on to Bill Bernard from the DPW.
Hey, yeah, Bill Bernard, DPW director. I don't think there's much difference at the DPW than what we've heard from the schools and the police and the fire. All that testimony from the school teachers, that could have easily been the DPW staff saying the same exact stuff. So right now the DPW highway workers, their contract expired. They're switching unions, so they're kind of in between, but they're going to be looking for a decent raise. I know I've looked around specifically for my position mostly, and I think across the board at the DPW we're 20% underpaid. They talked about 2008 being a bad year. From the guys told me back then the staff had 3 more guys, so we've lost 3 guys in 2008. Like somebody said, the work demand has grown, right? There's more people in town, there's more work to do, but the staff has not grown. We definitely need more staff at the DPW. And yeah, like the other people said, yeah, morale's down. It hurts. I don't know what else more to offer. There's been a lot said, and it all applies at DPW also.
Bill, is that the decrease in employees, is that partially tied up with the conversion with facilities or any of that as well? Or have we genuinely lost, if we look at DPW facilities and all the other departments, 3 actual employees that do that job?
Right, that was back in 2008 is what they told me, is when they lost people. So facilities split away from DPW. I guess the loss there is the executive assistant for the DPW now works for the facilities also. So she's doing 2 jobs.
Okay, Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Bernard? All right. Is there anyone else that is here to speak on behalf of a group of employees? There are two people who I don't know what they're here to speak about. One is Patrick Sullivan and the other is Mona Carpenter Bowen. Renee's hand is raised.
Patrick Sullivan is Chief Sullivan for the fire department.
Oh, he's the chief of the fire department. There we
He's
go.
the chief.
Yeah, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the secretaries.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chrissy.
No, that's okay. Mona and Tina couldn't make it.
Okay.
So, there's not that many of us for the school system, and I really can't speak for the town secretaries, except for the fact that I know that hiring postings for the admin in the town, I see the same postings again and again and again for a long period of time, so people are not applying. The secretaries, there's approximately 13 of us, some of them in a clerk position, some in a secretary, some in as admin. We negotiated our contracts a couple of years ago. We got some better conditions, which help our pay because our longevity was recognized. And we thank the town for recognizing that longevity does matter. However, we're going to be negotiating our contracts again in June, and the secretaries are going to need a bump in pay. The last contract was 2.5, 2.25, and then a 2. And we all know that doesn't go very far. I can tell you that there are some secretaries that they too are participating in local food pantries. And as much as we'd like to donate to them, it's not possible. Some of us who do live in town, have voiced concerns about how am I going to pay my property tax? The highest paid secretary who has 20-something years under their belts is making less than $60,000. And if you're trying to raise a family on $60,000, it's not going to happen. So I echo the sentiments of everybody else who's spoken. We all feel the pain. We're all having to make those hard decisions. On a side note, we also don't do a lot of overtime. However, we do stay and get the work done. And we do that because we know that the budgets are tight. Even if we were able to do the overtime when the overtime is necessary and boost our pay in some small way, that would be a benefit. I don't have a whole lot of statistics. What I do know is the difference between our starting pay and our highest step is only $5. And you're there for 5, 6, 7 years, but our starting pay and our highest step, the only difference is $5. That's not right, especially with the experience that our administration brings to the table. We're partners with admin. We're partners with the superintendent. We're partners with some central office. We're partners with town. And secretaries carry a load. So thank you.
Renee had her hand raised.
Yeah, if two things. One, I thought of a question for Bill. Bill, is it, others have mentioned that it's, yes, money is definitely a part of the issue, but there are non-monetary, there's other benefits to the job that could help retain, attract people and so on. Do you feel that way too for the DPW? Is it like you need better equipment or something, other equipment, hours, anything like that?
Yeah, I think other benefits would help. Yeah, the guys that they haven't said too much to me about what they're going to be asking for in their new contract, but yeah, definitely. I think benefits around, say, snow and ice when they're there 24 hours a day. I think there can be some benefits to help with that, so that, yeah, maybe some time off, or not, maybe they can go home or something after a 48-hour shift instead of having to work, 8 more hours. Stuff like that, I think, would go a long way with them.
But things like comp days, I imagine, could be difficult to manage, right? You have limited
Sure.
staff and
Mhm.
gonna have extra time off. The other thing I thought that would be helpful for me, there's a number of contracts in town that are all up at different times. Having kind of a calendar for the next 3 years of what contracts are up when would kind of help me get the 30,000 foot view of what's coming when and what lies ahead. If they're all hitting within the same year, if they're staggered, but just knowing that it's not something that's easy for me. I don't know, Ezzy, if between maybe Ezzy and Dr. Burnham can pull together between the town and the school all the contracts, the timing.
I will say on the shared drive for the budget task force, I did upload the most recent contracts. Tony had asked me to pull those.
Yeah, the contracts, but knowing like when they're up, like when negotiations are going to have, like when new contracts are going to be signed, and likely people are going to be looking for more of something or more of everything. I don't know.
Yeah, I can ask that from the administration. They should have a schedule.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Evan, you had your hand up.
I did originally. Renee then immediately took my question, but I thought of a follow-up question to that one. To add on to that, is it possible to also, I don't know if this gets sent out to anybody, whether it's on to the select board or to the town manager or just to Ezzy or anything, or Dr. Burnham, Dr. Gilson. Once a contract is negotiated and I assume ratified, what the budgetary impact is for that kind of going forward, because I'm sure it's well known within the specific department, and I'm sure it will kind of get out here and there, but to have it sort of in a centralized document so we can kind of see where COLAs are going, where sort of all of those new negotiated values are going to actually affect everything else, to kind of take a more holistic approach. I don't know if that's something that we can request. Nor do I know who we would ask.
Can I speak to add on to that?
Sure.
It actually might be a good document moving forward. I know I had requested of the town like 10 years worth of what COLAs and wage adjustments had been. And I kind of got a lot of us were around there, and we can get you what the current contracts are. But it seems like it would be a good idea to have some kind of doc going Excel sheet that is tracking that, have a different sheet for each bargaining unit and union, where you're filling in some of those financial information, so that 10 years from now, you can look back and say, all right, this is what the past 10 years trajectory, where are we going? Like, it just seems like a good financial practice for the town to be having and having a document somewhere, that no matter who is in the positions looking at that information can be accessed.
Evan's middle name is Excel.
Thank you, Mary, for saying that far more eloquently than I was able to. That's exactly what I was thinking. I heard Renee's good at Excel too, though.
Mr. Passios has his hand raised.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the DPW director, are you fully staffed at this point?
We are, with the exception of seasonal cemetery laborers.
Right, correct. Okay. I just wanted to make that point that you are fully staffed. As for the positions that we have on the books, if that's not sufficient, then that needs to be addressed, through other channels. But you are fully staffed, so you're not short-staffed like many other departments are. Seemingly, I'm not saying that the workload is less or equal to the number of positions you have, but you are fully staffed for what you're allowed at this point. I have one other quick question for the entire committee, actually, with the chair.
Sure.
I know you've been kicking around the town of Groton as a comparable town budgetary-wise, but it's impossible to compare them school district-wise because they are regional. Do you have in the back of your mind who's a comparable town for school comparison? I was on the DESE site a few minutes ago, and unfortunately, they're only updated to the 2021 school year, but there's some interesting numbers there, depending on which town you look at compared to Luna.
So I will say this, Dr. Gilson did a presentation, and it was the meeting where we did comps, and she did have it broken down. And I think there were 3 or 4 that were regionals, but we sort of took them separate and apart. We did have a relatively large sample size of non-regional school districts that acted as comps. And we started with the DESE list, and then they did some tweaking based on their expert knowledge of what actually makes things comparable. So yes, we did do that.
Okay. Yeah, just my comment, not to go backwards, but I know that in negotiations over the past few years, Winchendon had come up a number of times, especially with the personnel committee when they were doing their work. The numbers for the Winchendon School District versus Lunenburg are kind of interesting because their number of teachers is down, but their salaries are, average salary is approximately $3,000 less. And I know that cherry picking, but when you put out information, there needs to be comparisons made so that we really know where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Passios. Renee, you had a question. Your hand is raised.
Yeah, I think it's more of maybe a comment, but it's for Bill again, only because I know the stormwater management is a hot topic that we're looking at now. And would that not require additional staff as part of that if we were to implement a stormwater utility?
It would, and that would go a long way to help. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And we could, if we don't, there's the MS4 certification, right? And if we're not compliant, we could, which we currently are not compliant, we could be fined. Haven't yet, but
Exactly
happen.
right.
I have a question for all the people that were speaking on behalf of employees. One thing that Dr. Gilson and Dr. Burnham's number showed was that there was a real cost savings in the school district by hiring a position called a BCBA. And those people would work to offset the number of out-of-district placements. And so we identify them as sort of the spend a nickel to save a dime kind of expenditures. Are there other things for other groups that can work as the spend a nickel to save a dime kind of employees? For the school district and for the school committee, those expenses associated with out-of-district placement are among our largest single items, and they are often by surprise, and they are a trailing funding source. And so those shocks to the system are things that we need to be prepared for as much as we can be prepared for. And the BCBAs really did help make a difference. If you look at like comparable towns to Lunenburg, we have significantly fewer out-of-district placements, and those placements cost a lot of money. So for fire, for the secretaries, for DPW, for the police, are there positions where we could, essentially, get a better bang for our buck, or, in military terms, that they're like affordances, where they help us do what we're doing better by thinking of things differently?
I'll speak for the fire department, and unfortunately, that's what's gotten us into the position we're in now, is that we've tried to rely on part-time help to cover one shift of the week, and we can't get the help anymore. We can draw in some new call firefighters, but it takes anywhere from 6 to 8 months to get them to even basic training level, and they're still not paramedics. Paramedics is not another 9 to 18 months on top of that. And right now we can't get the paramedics. All of our 6 per diem paramedics all work full-time somewhere else. We had hired one new person that was a brand new paramedic. We barely saw him because he got hired by another department that pays well and again better than us and on a better schedule, and we never saw the kid again. So that's, we can use the per diems right now. If the full-timers pass on overtime that comes up, the per diems can take it. So there is a savings there, but the challenge for us is that I don't want to rely on them for the primary, get the truck out the door. I want to see the full-time staff across the board. And for that, right now, we need 3 more guys to make that happen.
Okay. Renee, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Chief Sullivan, can you comment on the impact the closing of Neshoba Valley has on staffing and ambulance as well?
We haven't felt it that bad yet, but last year we did 110 transports to Neshoba. So rough estimate, I'm going to say at least half of those are going to go to somewhere other than Leominster Hospital, probably Emerson. So instead of being out of town for 45 minutes, the ambulance is going to be gone for 2.5 hours. And knowing what the traffic is like, that could be even worse certain times a day. The other ripple effect that I see is we're going to be doing more mutual aid out of towns, because the towns that used to take a half an hour to turn around at Neshoba Hospital are now going further away, and it's taking them an hour and a half, 2 hours to get turned around. So now somebody else has got to cover their calls. We've already had a couple, and time will tell how much more that impacts us. We've seen a significant increase in the ambulance activity in the last couple years already, and I think this is just going to make it worse.
Okay, thanks.
Chief Sullivan, I just wanted to say, as soon as you turned on your camera, I knew who you were. I am sorry for missing your name. I didn't realize Chief Sullivan. I did not realize you were the guy.
I prefer anonymity.
It's the facial hair. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add to this discussion? I just want to point out that this is all really a bummer. Like, I know that word doesn't cover how bad it is.
Welcome to the Finance Committee.
I know, but I am reminded of Massachusetts' own Oliver Wendell Holmes when he said that taxes are the price of civilization. And I feel like, we're in a position where there are no solutions, only trade-offs, but I don't see how we get out of this without recommending some kind of tax increase, because we have too many people saying too many of the same things, and we're getting to the point where we're impairing basic function, and that's not good.
Yeah, unless you want to cut services. I mean,
yeah.
And that's why I was interested in how many teachers, how many people who work in town, live in town, because you increase taxes, it's going to hit them
Yeah,
It's a vicious
it'll
cycle.
just wipe it out, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, there was one other thing I wanted to bring up. I had emailed Carter about it, but I haven't heard back. The trash contract, the municipal waste that just went through. So we're covered for 3 years, and it came in, I think, under then the expectations, which I think were, let's prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But Carter made a comment that the next contract will likely, the pay as you throw program, we're not going to be able to get, and Bill, jump in if I get this wrong, but we're likely not going to be able to get a contractor to bid on that type of program. So we're looking at the carts. I have no idea what those cost, but going down that road, everyone will have to have those carts. So 3 years out, I don't know if there's a way to do this, and Ezzy, maybe to start, putting money aside to help the residents, relieve them of the burden of paying for those carts 3 years from now.
So we can probably continue with the pay as you throw, but we will be going to a card system at some point, right? So and there are some grants out there to help with the cards, but yeah, we're gonna have a big upfront cost when we do make that switch.
So that's something possibly 3 years out, right, Bill?
Yes.
After the current contract. So that's something to put on the, if we have this calendar of things we know are going to hit us and when, that's something to put on the roadmap.
It may be also part of a larger conversation to start some kind of reserve fund for these kind of items.
Exactly.
Just to plan accordingly.
Yeah.
Maybe at town meeting, have something prepared, not at fall town meeting, but at the next one. At the select board level, there may be a conversation at the finance committee to start there.
Mr. Passios, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, one recollection to Renee's comment there about trash. I had one other thing after that. What I heard from Carter was kind of a comment that the town might want to get out of the trash and recycling business and turn it back to the residents to contract their own contractors. I'm not sure how that intertwined. I know trash removal is no problem, but I'm not sure about the recycling. I've always felt that the town.
Oh, he froze.
No. He was getting to the good part.
I think it's people I know who have tried to get independent trash pickup. It's not necessarily easy to get out here.
No.
And that type of system.
Mr. Passios, you cut out right when you were about to say your punchline.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the stability up here is a little difficult. Basically, what I'm saying is that the general public that I speak with out on the street on a daily basis had no interest whatsoever in pursuing toters, especially this time around. Maybe it'll be different 3 years from now. But I think, the powers to be that are in place at that time to deal with that. I'd like to just make a comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, to the fire chief, and that is that I'm wondering if there's ways to mitigate some of the issues that you're having with staffing levels and the impact of Neshoba using contracted services either for BLS transports after it's been determined that it is a BLS issue. And, if there's any other ways of contracting, especially to cover that second run that you're not in town for, where you're having trouble staffing a second ambulance, and having that contracted at a paramedic level.
Not really much interest in that. The private services, one of the main reasons we went ALS along with Leominster Fire is because we couldn't rely on the private service in the area. I know that's been discussed in the Neshoba area too, and they can't, because they're getting killed with some of the facilities that they're having to do 911 work for, and they can't get the privates. The privates don't have the help either.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anything else anybody else wants to say?
Mr. Scalabrini, I can't raise my hand, but if I could make a couple
Oh,
comments.
sure.
So obviously you're aware that I'm retiring, but the town is true and dear to me. The community is, you know, it's a great community, but one of our biggest values is our employees. And you need to find a way to show them the value, whether it's settling these contracts and raising up the rate of pay. But they're the most important assets of the town, whether it's our police, our fire, our teachers, DPW workers, or whoever it may be in town. Those should be our most valued assets. They're the ones that are providing the service to the community. And you need to find a way that to show that value to them. And you got to make a determination here is that money has to come from somewhere. And if 2.5 is not working, you need to find a way to say, okay, we need to find another avenue. Whether it is taxing to the levy, whether it is going to an override, whatever it may be, you're at a crossroads, and every one of you just mentioned a ton of different issues that are coming up. They're not going away anytime soon. Personnel issues are not going away anytime soon. Nobody wants to work in the public sector anymore because the benefits and the money that is coming here or coming to the employees is not matching the private sector. That's why you're not seeing it. And you have to be dedicated to work in towns. You have to be dedicated to work in municipalities. And I think we need to recognize that and find ways to get that money or get those benefits and incentives to our employees. Thank you.
Evan?
Chief Gamble, just real quick, have those incentives matched in the past? Have we had the public sector incentives sort of commiserate with private sector, or has it, from what I've noticed, it's sort of always been the private sector is moving along, and then here comes the public sector kind of trying to get like dragged along on a leash, basically.
Yeah, well, try more like an anchor.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had these discussions during our finance committee meetings and stuff like that. No, we're not keeping up with the private sector. We're not. Those benefits that we offer now are not outweighing what the benefits are in the private sector. And it's not unique to our town. I think this is countrywide, and I think it's Massachusetts has a definite problem with hiring municipal workers. I don't care at what level it is or where it is, but this shouldn't be satisfactory for our community. You have hardworking employees in this town that have done it for 20, 30 years, and they continue to get kicked to the curb, and you got to make a decision. And that decision is to show those employees that you value. I've been working for this town for 24 years. I started coaching here in 1995, and I can tell you that it was bad back then. It wasn't unique to the teachers union. Law enforcement, fire, DPW were well behind, and that was something that was always been done in this town, and you need to change that mindset. And this committee right here can do it. I mean, this is your charge is to find out what the issues are and how can we get past this. And I think there's ways to do it. And monetarily, is it hard? Yeah, absolutely. But those decisions are going to have to be put on the shoulders of the citizens in town and say, this is what we need to continue forward and to keep good employees. I think you heard every union member here tell you that they're going to start feeling less and less valued the more we keep going in this direction. And you need to bring that back up.
I think that there might be an actual silver lining to this extremely depressing meeting that we've had. And
what, my retirement? Yeah, of course.
That was exactly where I was going. It's October 1st, right? It's already here. No, and that's that. I mean, regardless of sort of where this committee ends up heading, it sounds like there's enough capital in all of the different unions and all the different departments across the town to kind of ideally come together and say, hey, here's where the whole town kind of sits. It's not just this department over here or this person over here asking for more. It's sort of, this is where the entirety sits. And I think that gives you a lot louder of a voice and a lot more, better chance, I guess, of if there is this conversation of, do we try for an override again to say, look, we did what we needed to for the schools last year, but here's where we are with the entire town. Maybe there's an actual better chance there.
I agree, but I also think it can't be short-sighted. I think it's got to be, you have to look at this and say, okay, one-time override isn't going to be enough. We know that, and I've given you a 5-year or 10-year outlook of what we're looking at as a police department. And those things are going to come up. I think it's future planning. We're all going to have capital needs, and that's going to come up. So I think, and again, I don't want to, speak for the committee, but I mean, that's kind of the charge that you're looking at, right? You want to see, where do we go from here, and how do we progress forward and say, okay, here's your strategic plan for 5 years, 10 years. What is the town willing to accept? So I think you have to have more foresight than just a one-time override. It's got to be, what is the tax levy limit? What do people can handle? What do we go through to get this to a point where we're successful? You've heard every employee union here and how hard they work on very less than what a lot of communities make. That's my spiel. I think the silver
lining to all of this is that we have a lot of really wise people advising us. I think I personally, and I'm not making any commitments for anybody else, I personally agree with every single word that you said. I think that Mr. Passios, the unofficial consigliere of the Budget Task Force, has provided us with a lot of insights. And I think the fact that everybody here is willing to take time out of their day to tell us these are the issues means that they're all at least willing to work, right? They're all willing to work to make things better. And I say this a lot, but unions represent a commitment on the part of the employees to improve their workplace. Because if they didn't want to stay, they wouldn't join a union, they just leave. And so, hopefully we've heard how bad it is, and we're going to start working on solutions. But I just wanted to say, I think, having the wise people at the table helps make those decisions better. Anybody else want to talk? One last issue. We are meeting next Monday. We missed a meeting because of Labor Day. I plan to do it. So, Mr. Passios, go ahead.
I was going to let you finish your comments, but thank you for the including me in the meeting. I'm really not trying to hone in or be a member of your committee, but as you know, I have a.
He has a bad internet connection.
I think Mr. Passios should stay in Massachusetts where he has good internet.
I mean, at least his screen isn't freezing on some horrible facial feature that he's making. Or face.
He looks very thoughtful right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, like he's posing almost.
That you look at ways to shift the impact away from seniors and at-risk families in the town of Lunenburg. There is one thing that would take, I've mentioned a couple of times in FinCom meetings, but it's a process that would take 3 years, and that is to allow cities and towns to impose an income tax, a local income tax, which in effect shifts the burden from the low-income seniors and the at-risk families to higher-earning families in town, and could allow you to shift some of the burden off of real estate to an income tax. There's a lot to that, and there's very clear lines on one side of the fence versus the other. But please, as you're looking at this, try to find ways to shift that burden. Thank you.
All right. Again, you have the wise people at the table, you make better decisions. Do we want to do 3 meetings in a row, or are the 2 meetings in a row enough? What do people think?
So the 23rd?
So right now we're
on?
scheduled for wait a second. I think we have 2 in a row. We have the 30th and the 7th, and I had done that to offset the Labor Day. But do people think we need to do, so if we did the 23rd, we'd have 4 in a row.
Do you
And
have
remember,
the
I
topics, Tony, that you proposed? Do you have
Yeah.
that schedule handy?
Yeah, let me get it.
'Cause-
So the other thing I would mention is that we did build in a cushion at the end. So we do have 1 free floating day. Let's see. So we had capital planning in the next meeting, and then October 7th was where we start generating recommendations. So I'm happy to leave it as it is. I'm happy to add 1 on the 23rd and just move everything up 1. It just depends on what everybody wants to do. But we do have a flex meeting scheduled for December 2nd.
Mm. I would like, and I don't want to volunteer Evan, but I'd like to take a deeper dive into his analysis of Maynard and split tax rate.
Okay.
But I would like to include our assessor and maybe
Okay. So
the
you want
Board
to
of
add a
Assessors.
meeting for next week for the split tax
Could
rate?
it, is that I don't know, Evan, are you up for that?
I
At
have 2/3
some
of a
point?
presentation. I showed most of it to FinCom last week,
Yeah.
so I bored them to death already. I'm happy to bore this group to death as well. I have lots of spreadsheet slides that I've turned over to pivot table charts, so I'm ready to go.
What do you think of including Linda, right? Is
Yeah,
our
it's
principal
Miley.
assessor now?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
Linda. Yeah, I can see if she's available. She's not in this week until Wednesday, but I'll
Or
check in.
or Brian LaFont, I don't know.
I'd
Someone
kinda
who
like
knows
to-
more about tax rates than
Yeah, I
And
kind
they-
of would like to maybe talk with them ahead of time so that it's not just dropped on them
Yeah.
like, oh, here, take a look at this.
Mhm.
So I have no problem, easy if we can set up like a short meeting just to kind of at least drop the idea on them or kind of give them the very high level ideas or topics
Sure.
in between now and then.
But I know the Board of Assessors meets on Mondays. That's which Monday? I don't know. Let me see if I can look.
So do we want to create a meeting on the 23rd?
The
Do
other
we-
question, I was going to ask too, do we want to maybe have a joint meeting with the Board of Assessors?
Well, they're meeting Wednesday, the 18th. And then do you think we can cover that and capital in one meeting?
I don't know, because I don't know how long the split tax rate thing is going to take. I'm going to be really candid. I don't know what that means at all. So like, if it was something that I was familiar with, I'd have better opinions, but I have no idea.
So currently we have a single tax rate regardless of commercial, industrial, residential.
Yeah.
Some towns have a split rate where commercial industrial have a separate rate other than the residential. So that's really where that's leading to.
Okay.
And Maynard is one of those towns who looks,
Oh, okay.
it's like a condensed Lunenburg. It's just very
Yeah,
dense.
yeah.
But
Maynard
a
is
lot of the
always
other
coming up on
numbers,
comps.
including non-regional schools,
Yeah.
match up well. And they've had, DLS goes back to 2003 and they've had a split tax rate since then.
Okay.
Evan's computer died. He's restarting now, by the way.
Evan's coming in right now.
Okay.
Evan, do you want to do your split tax rate song and dance on the 23rd?
You're muted, Evan.
Oh, I just came back in.
Do you
My
want to
computer died.
do your split tax rate song and dance on the 23rd? Should we make another meeting so we have 4 in a row?
I think that might be too soon, especially if we
Yeah.
want to
All
talk.
right. All right. So let's talk about putting one maybe between the 7th and the 21st. I mean, either way, we're gonna do 4 in a row.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. All right.
If
I
we
think
did
we can handle this
30th?
agenda item offline, and we don't need to have everybody else
Yeah.
stay on. So, is anybody willing to make a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask
I
one
have-
question?
Oh,
Go
sure.
ahead,
Sorry.
Renee. You may be saying the same thing, Renee. Do you want to do CPA at the same time? Community Preservation Act, Community Preservation Act.
I mean, that makes sense to me. I do know what that is.
I only know what it is because
We
of Izzy.
touched on it at one meeting, earlier
Yes.
meeting.
And that's
Yeah.
why I looked it up and know what it is.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes hand in hand with the split tax rate discussion at the same time.
I feel like we might have to do the 30th and the 7th,
Okay, that works.
maybe.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna bring up a separate question, more of a housekeeping. Well, like meeting schedule is also housekeeping. Minutes. I saw Laura a few weeks ago and she said she knows she owes us the minutes for the first meeting, but I thought she was gonna do the minutes for all the meetings. I don't think we were on the same page with that. We don't have any minutes, official minutes written
I
up
mean, I
yet.
could scan these and send them to everybody.
I can maybe start working on some, but does anyone have any nicely written notes that I could start from rather than my chicken scratch? Something that's electronic?
Oh, nothing that's electronic, but I do have good handwriting.
Oh,
I have
I went to
some
Catholic
electronic,
school.
okay, Evan has electronic.
but it's not good. It's chicken scratch electronic. I can at least email them to you, Renee.
Okay,
They'll show up as PDFs.
really?
I'll
Then I
scan
can't edit
mine
it.
and you can take a look at them. All right. Anything else?
No, just let me know when we're meeting, because I got a lot of stuff and potential trips coming up, so.
I don't think we're gonna meet between now and the 30th.
Okay,
So we'll know by next meeting after that.
Wait,
so
we're
plan
not
on
doing
the
the
30th?
we're not doing the 23rd then?
I thought Renee said that that would not be ready by then.
Unless we do capital on the 20th.
Right.
The split tax rate and Community Preservation Act stuff would not be ready by the 23rd of September.
The split tax rate will be ready. That's pretty much done.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Well, then we will have a meeting on the 23rd.
Okay.
It will star Evan Waters. He will have
Yeah.
silver sequined gloves.
Yes, and we'll see how long people stay awake for.
All right. With that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
and thanks
Anybody else?
everyone for joining from all the.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
We're really glad you're here. All of you. Ending meeting.